there's only one thing I have to say, and I can't put it off for another.
She was hailed as Australia's new pop princess, a dazzling voice with a sparkling smile that lit up television screens and concert stages alike. But just when the world expected her to become the next international sensation, she vanished. No farewell tour, no emotional goodbye, no public explanation. One moment she was everywhere, on award shows, music charts, and teen magazine covers, and the next she was simply gone. Why did Christie Allen, a rising star with hit singles and a devoted following, disappear from the spotlight just 2 years after conquering it? What happened behind the scenes that silenced one of Australia's most beloved voices so abruptly? Some said illness, others whispered of emotional breakdowns, and a few believed she had simply had enough of fame. But the truth, hidden behind closed doors for decades, paints a more haunting picture of a woman torn between the promise of stardom and the crushing weight it carried. This is not just the story of a singer who lost her voice to time. It is a tale of how the music industry devours its young, of a gentle soul caught in a whirlwind of fame she never fully wanted. Before her untimely death, Christie Allen's final years revealed fragments of a painful private truth, one that many still don't know. Tonight, we uncover the fleeting rise and silent retreat of Christie Allen, the untold chapters, the personal tragedies, and the dark secret that may explain why one of Australia's brightest pop lights chose to fade into the shadows. Australia in the late 1970s was brimming with musical energy. Countdown ruled the airwaves, vinyl singles dictated youth culture, and the nation was hungry for homegrown stars who could rival the global icons pouring in from the UK and US. In this vibrant, testosterone-driven scene, where rock bands dominated and male soloists claimed most of the spotlight, emerged a refreshing, unlikely figure, Christie Allen, a young woman with an infectious smile, a voice drenched in melody, and an aura of pure joy. Born in the UK and raised in Western Australia, Christie wasn't the product of slick music industry grooming. She wasn't sculpted in a boardroom or churned out by some media machine. Her charm felt authentic, her voice rich with feeling. Discovered by Terry Britton, the British-Australian producer best known for working with Tina Turner and Cliff Richard, Christie was offered the kind of platform most young dreamers only fantasized about. Britton saw something in her, something rare, a voice that could soar, and a personality that could connect. By 1979, Christie had exploded onto the Australian pop scene. Her single, Goosebumps, became a massive hit, not just musically, but culturally. It was one of those songs that defined a moment, a summer, a generation. Dressed in pastels, with an unforced confidence, Christie offered a different kind of pop idol, relatable, endearing, and unapologetically feminine. But behind the soft-focus music videos and smiling TV interviews, something deeper was brewing. Even as she accepted the award for Most Popular Female Performer at the Countdown Awards, there were already whispers. People close to her spoke of exhaustion. Friends noticed her withdrawing. Industry insiders saw that behind her rising fame was a young woman struggling with the demands placed on her, a voice being pushed to deliver, a body being pulled in every direction, and a soul quietly suffocating. She had barely started, and yet there was already a sense of retreat. While the public celebrated her chart success and TV appearances, Christie Allen was beginning to unravel. What no one realized at the time was that her golden moment would be tragically brief. Within just 2 years, the same girl who had electrified the stage with songs like He's My Number One would disappear almost entirely from the music industry. This wasn't a typical fall from fame. There were no scandals, no drug arrests, no public meltdowns, just silence. And in that silence, 1,000 questions were born. Why did she walk away? Did she jump or was she pushed? And what personal battle was she fighting, hidden from the cameras? What began as a Cinderella story was about to turn into one of Australia's most quietly devastating showbiz mysteries. Before she became Christie Allen, the radiant pop darling with chart-topping hits and adoring fans, she was Christina Amphlett Allen, a shy British girl growing up under the sun-drenched skies of Perth, Western Australia. Her family had emigrated from the UK when she was still a child, settling into a modest life far from the flashing lights of the music industry. But even in those quiet beginnings, music was in her blood. Alongside her brothers, Christie began performing in a family band called Pendulum, touring local pubs and dance halls. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. It was where she found her footing, where her voice began to bloom. The turning point came when her band crossed paths with producer and songwriter Terry Britton. He saw what others had overlooked, a natural talent with a distinct tone, a softness that didn't need to be forced into the mold of a disco diva or a rock goddess. Britton took her under his wing, rebranding her as a solo artist and crafting songs that fit her voice like a second skin. In 1979, Goosebumps exploded onto the charts. It wasn't just a success, it was a phenomenon. Infectious, upbeat, and radio-ready, the song raced to number 3 on the Australian Kent Music Report. For a debut single, it was nothing short of astonishing. With that one song, Christie became a household name. TV appearances followed, including countless spots on Countdown, where her genuine demeanor and wide-eyed excitement made her stand out from more polished acts. She wasn't pretending to be anything she wasn't. That authenticity endeared her to fans, especially young women who saw themselves in her. Then came He's My Number One, another top 5 hit, cementing her as a true pop sensation. She swept the TV Week Countdown Music Awards, earning Most Popular Female Performer in 1979 and again in 1980. She was now in the same conversations as Olivia Newton-John and Marsha Hines. But unlike them, Christie had emerged without an international push. Her success was entirely rooted in Australian love. She released her debut album Magic Rhythm, and though it didn't reach the same commercial heights as the singles, it showcased her range, from playful to poignant. Her performances remained sincere, and her voice, though never bombastic, carried an emotional clarity that made each lyric feel personal. But even as her fame soared, subtle cracks began to show. She canceled performances. Rumors swirled of exhaustion, perhaps overwork. Some said she didn't have the stamina for touring. Others pointed fingers at the label for rushing her career. The truth was, Christie wasn't built for the relentless machinery of pop stardom. She had the talent, but not the appetite for the constant hustle, the interviews, the photo shoots, the industry politics. It drained her. By the early 1980s, the sparkle began to fade. Her later singles, like Baby Get Away, didn't chart as well. She stepped away from music gradually, quietly. No official statements, no farewell performance, just absence. People assumed she was taking a break. No one imagined it would be permanent. And so within just 2 years, Australia's most beloved pop newcomer had vanished, not in scandal or disgrace, but in quiet retreat. A silence far louder than any headline. For decades, Christie Allen's disappearance from the spotlight remained a gentle mystery, one that fans pondered but never dared intrude upon. There were no salacious headlines, no fall from grace, just an eerie quiet and the unshakable sense that something deeper had taken her away from the stage. In rare interviews years later, fragments of the truth began to surface. Christie had been silently fighting a devastating personal battle. At the peak of her fame, just as she was being touted as Australia's next international export, she was diagnosed with a chronic illness, one that affected her energy, her voice, and her ability to perform. It wasn't made public. There was no dramatic press release. That wasn't her style. Instead, she withdrew, choosing health, family, and privacy over fame. But there was more beneath that decision. Friends later revealed that Christie had never truly desired stardom. Music was her passion, yes, but the industry was not. The demands, the relentless schedules, the manipulation, the pressure to fit a certain image, it drained her spirit. According to those close to her, Christie often felt out of place in a world obsessed with reinvention and spectacle, especially during a time when female artists were expected to be either dazzling sex symbols or unyielding vocal powerhouses. She was neither. She was real. In private moments, she reportedly confessed that she missed the simplicity of her early days, performing with her family, singing not for fame but for joy. "I wanted the music," she once said quietly to a friend, but not the circus that came with it. By the time she attempted a return to music in the late 1990s, the industry had shifted. Pop was younger, slicker, and less forgiving. Christie made a few gentle appearances, including the Countdown Spectacular Tour, and fans were ecstatic to see her again. But her health had deteriorated. She was now battling pancreatic cancer, a diagnosis she kept largely private. Even then, she chose to face it with grace. No tabloid drama, no interviews seeking sympathy. Just quiet dignity. When Christie Allen passed away in 2008 at the age of 54, the tributes poured in, but also confusion. I thought she stopped singing in the 80s? Some asked. Others hadn't realized she had still been alive, so thoroughly had she distanced herself from the world that once adored her. What remains most haunting is how little was ever said. There was no scandal, no betrayal, only silence. And in that silence, the quiet tragedy of a woman who gave the world her light, only to retreat when that world wanted to consume it. Behind the cameras, behind the awards, there was a woman worn down by the very thing that was supposed to make her. She wasn't destroyed by fame. She walked away from it, on her own terms. But that choice came at a cost. A silence that left fans bewildered, and a legacy that too often went unspoken. It wasn't until she was gone that people truly asked, what really happened to Christie Allen? And in that question lies the heartbreaking truth. She didn't fall, she faded. Christie Allen's story is not one of failure. It is not even a story of lost potential. It is, in many ways, a powerful and heartbreaking meditation on choice, on the difference between fame and fulfillment, between public adoration and personal peace. At Aussie Uncovered, we don't see Christie Allen as a faded pop star. We see her as one of the few who had the courage to walk away. In an industry that often demands everything, your voice, your time, your privacy, your very identity, Christie made a decision that most could never imagine. To disappear quietly, without drama, without scandal, without making herself a cautionary tale. And yet, because she left so gently, she was almost forgotten. That, perhaps, is the greatest injustice. Here was a woman who delivered two of the most beloved pop hits of her generation, who captured the spirit of Australia's musical golden age with a smile so bright and a voice so true. Yet history has barely whispered her name in the years since. Had she flamed out in scandal, perhaps she would be remembered more vividly. But instead, she chose silence, and silence rarely leaves a mark in entertainment history. But maybe it should. Maybe Christie Allen represents a different kind of legacy. Not one built on headlines or platinum records, but on integrity. On the decision to prioritize her health, her family, and her dignity. On the quiet bravery of stepping back before the machine could break her completely. It is easy to romanticize the ones who stay, the stars who endure the spotlight, who ride the roller coaster of success and collapse. But it takes a different kind of strength to say, this is enough. As fans, we often want more. We wonder what she could have been. Could she have become Australia's Olivia Newton-John? Could Goosebumps have opened the door to a global career? Perhaps. But perhaps that was never the point. Christie Allen gave us what she could, and then she took back the rest for herself. So now we ask you, do you remember her? Do you remember the feeling of that song on the radio? The glow of her on Countdown? The way her music made you smile? Because that's what matters. Not how long a flame burns, but how brightly it once did. And for a brief, unforgettable time, Christie Allen shone with a light that belonged only to her. There's something achingly beautiful about a voice you remember, but can't quite place. A melody that once played everywhere, now tucked away in the quiet corners of memory. That was Christie Allen. Not a household name anymore, not a pop legend in the traditional sense, but a feeling, a snapshot of a golden time in Australian music when innocence and optimism still had a place on stage. Her story doesn't end with a tabloid scandal or a triumphant comeback. It ends softly, with dignity, with a choice. She stepped away from the lights before they could blind her completely. And in doing so, she left behind a legacy that only grows more poignant with time. Listen closely to Goosebumps now, and you'll hear more than a catchy tune. You'll hear a young woman in her early 20s singing with everything she had, maybe not knowing how short her time in the spotlight would be, maybe knowing exactly. You'll hear the echo of a brief, brilliant career, and the silent ache of everything she carried when the music stopped. Some stories are never told, but now you know. And maybe that's the true gift Christie Allen left us. Not just her music, but a reminder that fame isn't the only path to meaning. That stepping away can be just as powerful as standing center stage, and that even the briefest flicker of light can illuminate a generation. She may have vanished, but she was never erased. She was Christie Allen. She was your number one. And for those who remember, she always will be.